Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, can you hear me better?
I can hear you.
Okay, give me a second. I'm currently building a ziggurat. First things first, Bill. Today is the 1st of April. Today is April Fool's Day.
And a Merry Foolsmas to you, Edgar.
Thanks, Bill. Right back at you. So I'm not usually one to indulge in April Fool's tomfoolery because April Fool's Day is a bit kind of naff. It's a bit of a weird concept, particularly in the age we currently live in, with the whole like fake news things and all that sort of jazz. But this year I kind of decided to give it a shot. And what I've done, Bill, is I've created an April Fool's Day thing for the podcast that's kind of at your expense. So I need to describe it to you. And if you give me your blessing, I will post it later on today. Okay?
Okay.
So I've created, do you know the way everyone loves Bill's laugh? Your laugh, yeah?
Okay.
I've created a compilation of what I think are your best laughs and made it a 10-hour long compilation of Bill laughing. And I've uploaded that. I'm currently uploading it on private to the YouTube channel, and I can put it in the feed. You can't listen to it because the thing has been processing for like hours because it's so big. You need to kind of trust my description here. Would you be okay with an April Fool's Day video where it's 10 hours of you laughing on a loop?
Where is the bit of this that's at my expense?
Well, it's kind of taking the piss out of your laugh.
No, it's a tribute to the glory of my laugh.
Yes. Okay, well then you have no problems with it, yeah?
No, I'll go for it.
Yes! I'm so happy. It's taken so long to upload. It's such an incredibly large file. It's ridiculous. But yeah, we'll put it up later tonight. Cool, so that's April Fool's. Other thing I want to talk about before we get into follow-up is a bit of plugging on my end. My brother is a jazz bassist, for anyone who doesn't know, and he is currently in the middle of recording his first solo EP.
Cool.
As a composer, I guess, because he's writing the music for a huge ensemble. Like, he's writing music for loads of different instruments. And the work is called Ex Ovo Omnia. It's a 4-track EP. Features like a 16-piece ensemble for most of the tunes, I think, and it's this sort of jazz fusion type thing. And it combines
Cool.
like rock and metal and jazz and Latin, and it's real like avant-garde eclectic jazz music. And I bring this up to say that he has it on Indiegogo at the moment, and he's trying to look for funds to complete it because he's ran out of cash because paying musicians is horrifically expensive. And I said I helped him record some promotional videos for the thing, and I was like, look, I'll throw it on the podcast and see if anyone would have a look and help you out, because I'd really like if you could see it to completion. So I'll put
there he is.
Say again?
Sorry, I'm just looking at his website now. I haven't seen him in ages.
Go to his Indiegogo page if that's on, or go to his YouTube channel. It's linked in the show notes. So I'm going to put the Indiegogo page in the show notes. If you can support and you like jazz music, please do. That would mean a lot to him and I. If you can't, just listen to the first track off the EP, a track called Patron. It's on YouTube. It's available for free. Have a gander to that. In fact, what I might even do, if it's okay with Bill, I might put that track at the end of this podcast. Just let it play out at the very end. So people can have a listen.
That's fine with me.
Just a plug.
If it's fine with your brother.
Oh yeah, no, he's fine with that. Yeah, he was like, you can use whatever you want.
Cool.
So just a plug there for my brother. Yeah, so Ex Ovo Omnia. Go check him out, and also you can go see what my brother looks like and what he sounds like. Some of the patrons, I showed them the promotional video, and they were like, "Oh my god, it's Edgar 2.0. It sounds so much like you." And there was a little running joke in the Discord where it was like, "How about you get him to replace you on the podcast and just don't tell anyone? No one will ever know." So it was quite fun. So go check out the Indiegogo page and the YouTube and all that sort of jazz. Yep.
Say you got a haircut or something, or you got a new hairstyle, and get him to do a vlog, and don't ever do it again, and don't bring it up afterwards.
Yeah, I'd need to grow my hair fairly long, and I'd need to grow a bit of a goatee. And also, we're very different in body shape. Like I'm really thin, and he's more rounded, more rotund, some might say. So we visually we've a lot to go to get to the same. But if you close your eyes, apparently we're identical. But yeah, so yeah, go check it out, everyone.
We got an email here from Yog Mike Future.
Yes, great name.
Who says, "Hey, just found out that you're a music theorist. Will you be looking at world building a new music theory for a world, looking at creating new scales, time signatures, and traditions?" And kind of questions along that line. Mm-hmm. I have touched on this before on my music blog, which is pretty much defunct now. I haven't really written anything on it for about 3 years. But the last thing I wrote was intended to be the first in a series of posts about world building music. So check out the first one that I've written there, which examines the kind of the social context of music and how to think about those in a world building setting, or some frameworks that you could use to think about that. I kind of stalled writing the second one, which is going to be a more theoretical approach, because I would like to go from the start with things, and there's a very, very big topic to tackle and do justice to, and then that was years ago and I just haven't gotten around to it since. But what I would say is examine your assumptions about music, including about the theory. Like one of the things, the question here is phrased as looking at creating new scales, time signatures, and traditions. Time signatures is only really a coherent concept within Western music. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about world building music, look at why you're talking about time signatures, because that's not a thing in the same way in Indian music or in Japanese music or in anything else. So I mean, by all means, look at how you're thinking about time and how you're thinking about rhythm and tempo. But time signatures is a very specific kind of phrase. That would be my main thing. Is question your assumptions and look at other musics around the world for inspiration and ideas of how you can do things differently. And looking at that can show what our assumptions are. Like one of the things that he says here in this is octaves are a given, which is broadly true. But I think in Maori music, in like traditional New Zealand music, they tend to use a pitch range that's much smaller than that, so octaves don't even come into it.
Yeah, but surely they would transpose like high-low notes, you know? Like even if you have a pitch range that's like a fifth in space, say, if you sing a high root, that's then an octave by default.
What do you mean a high root?
As in, like, if say you had do, re, mi, fa, so as your kind of range, like that small range, singing a high do gives you octaves. Like octaves must naturally.
But they don't know. But the instruments that they're using. This is based on a lecture I went to given by a composer from New Zealand.
Oh,
the instruments don't have that range. They have a range of a fourth or a fifth or something, and it's microtonal within that, and they don't use multiple voices. So
interesting.
Like doing it up an octave doesn't come into it. Now, I may be misrepresenting that. And I'm not trying to be an expert on Maori music. I'm not claiming that. But even if that's untrue, there is a potential example of a music system that doesn't rely on octaves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. My opinion on this is that I think world building. We talked about this ages ago during a Star Wars special. About world building music. I still hold the belief that theoretical music world building is kind of too esoteric to be functionally useful. Unless, of course, you just, from an academic perspective, you're interested in interrogating music and like remixing it. But in terms of like a story, like I can never see, time signatures making their way into a story. Like no one's ever going to say like, oh, I went to this strange foreign land and they played music in 10:8 or something like that. Like at best to be all like, I went to a strange foreign land and their musics were alien to my ears or something like that, less kind of theoretical and more just world painting, like coloring a world. And I think it's easier to world build in terms of like different instruments, that's especially with visual world building. That's a lot more productive than I think reworking the theoretical underpinning of music. But again, I think we said this before in the past. I think it's because we both study music that we are reluctant to delve into it so much. And you mentioned at the start there, where it's just like, without coming across as being braggy, we know like too much about it, and we're all like, we need to go back to the very beginning and rework the entire system. It's not just a case of being all like, I'm going to mess with the number of notes in a scale or something like that. It's like, no, the whole thing needs to be redone, and that's the thing that I just think hardly anyone is interested in. Plugs for some YouTube channels here that if you are interested in kind of like the more trippy nature of music and maybe messing with things, there's a YouTube channel called 12 Tone, which goes through the music theory behind various pop songs, and sometimes gets way more avant-garde and goes into like hardcore music theory and explains that in a real neat way.
Yeah, his videos are very good.
They're very, very good. And the other person is Adam Neely, which loads of people in the sub I know watch anyways, but he very often will do music explainy videos where he explains the concepts of music, and him questioning the subject matter could be a good starting point for coming up with your own system. So those being the show notes, you should go check the two of them out.
I'm going to add to that.
Oh,
there's a good channel called Early Music Sources, which now it's very based in Western music because it's about kind of Renaissance through Baroque music. But even then, that is quite different, and things were conceived quite differently to modern Western music. So looking at that and looking at how they dealt with things can be quite interesting from a world building point of view.
Links in the show notes. I'm going to push back on that a little bit, Bill. I think that early music, so early music for anyone that's like, oh yeah, you said it, like Renaissance music, that sort of thing. I think early music is much more similar to modern day contemporary classical music than it is to say like Mozart and things like that. Because I remember my teacher in college being like, you'd be surprised with the amount of people who have an affinity towards very early music and very contemporary music, but struggle. I was one of these people, but struggle in the middle with like classical and romantic, because the two of them kind of a lot of the same sort of interpretive tools can be applied to those two styles. So for me, anyways, they were always very, very, very similar, like high end contemporary music, and then like bard music from the Renaissance.
Yeah. There's an element of truth to that, but also early music is so broad that there's a lot of different things going on. So I don't think it holds up necessarily. And the social context of it is one of the things that's very, very different.
Sure, yeah, that's entirely fair, yeah.
But also that's a really funny channel. Like it's a lot of people would see that as quite dry subject matter, and it's full of memes, the videos are, and like animations and just like slightly weird humor. So it's kind of fun.
Oh, speaking of which, we need to move on from this email in a second because we'll be here all day. But I've discovered this really fun channel. It's an Irish fella, as far as I know. And what he does is he critiques music notation software, but does so in a really like hyper dramatic, super anal, memey sort of way, and it's hysterical. Like he tore Sibelius a new one recently, and it's just brilliant. Sibelius, for anyone, it's a musical notation software, and it's just it's a musical guy who's into design complaining about this like horrifically designed software that he has to use all the time to write his music, and it's just it starts off normal and descends into madness. It's brilliant. I'll link it in the show notes.
Cool.
So yeah, next email.
The next email is from Jozenkeep, who's a fairly regular contributor.
Mm-hmm.
And the subject is the viability of a gas torus. I've been trying to construct a star system that contains a stable gas torus, somewhat similar to the setting of The Integral Trees by Larry Niven. Okay, I haven't read that.
Nor have I.
The idea is that this gas torus would somewhat obscure the stars, and if the ecliptic plane is parallel to the galactic plane, it would almost look like a continuation of the galaxy from the night sky to the day sky.
That part, on that part. So first of all, the stability of a gas torus, like, you know, it's really Taurus planets aren't all that stable. I remember saying that they were stable in my Taurus planet video, but that's like mathematically stable. Like in the real world, they're not going to happen. So the notion of a gas torus also being mathematically stable is just, yeah, it's just not going to happen. Because if you think about it, if you take like a ball of material and spin it really fast, it'll flatten out, and it can stretch itself into a torus by rotational speed. That rotation speed is really, really quick, and it's going to be quicker. It's going to be so quick that it's just going to eject all the particles, all the hydrogen and helium, because they're so light. So it's just not going to happen. And it's not going to be geologically stable whatsoever. And also the continuation, sorry, I don't mean to like crap all over your idea here, but the continuation of it being a continuation of the galaxy, I don't see how that would happen. Do you know? Like if you looked in the sky and you saw a gas torus, even if it was very close, like you were a moon of this gas torus, I don't see how that would look like background galaxy at all. That bit kind of, I wonder about that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where the observer is observing from. In that.
But I think from any point of observation, it doesn't work. Because imagine if we replace Jupiter with a gas torus, we wouldn't see it. But if we're on the moon and we replace Earth with a gas torus, it just wouldn't look like the background galaxy at all. And I don't think there's a point in between those two distances whereby it would look like the background galaxy. It's just they're two entirely different things. Maybe culturally, as in people would look at it and they kind of, that would be the symbolism they give that, but like physically not at all. But then again, magic, it's fine. Yeah, and then Jozenkeep goes on to outline two ways in which they think that the gas torus could be stable, or at least stable to some degree. And I mean, the stuff they mentioned just really quickly is fine. They're all like correct scientific things. It's just the notion of a gas torus is so out there. It's just not. It's not going to happen. You're not in the realms of science anymore. You're in the realms of fantasy. So I think you need to ditch the having to justify it with science. Is my idea.
Sure.
Cool. Next email.
The next email is
another
from
Edgar one. Okay, hold on.
It's another Edgar one. No, we didn't get this through the usual form, so I hope we can use the first name here.
Yeah, we'll use first name. That's anonymous enough. But we're going to butcher it, so let's do Ashilder. No,
Ashilder, yeah.
Ashilder.
I'm sure.
Ashilder. It's probably got that really nice Icelandic or at the end that I can't do. Ashilder. So Ashilder wrote in with. They did a little bit of conlanging around the Avox from Hunger Games. This has been a recurring feature of the Artifexian podcast. They're a group of people in the Hunger Games stories that had their tongues cut out, if I remember correctly. Yes?
Yeah, as a punishment for treason or sedition or something.
And I think you speculated as to how that language would work, how they would speak.
Did they have a language in the series, or were we just speculating that they could come up with a language to subvert their punishment?
So I recently watched the films, and there's no mention of it in the films, as far as I remember. And in the films, like the person who's an Avox makes like an appearance for like two minutes. That's it.
Right.
But in the books, I haven't read them. Maybe there is something. I suspect we were speculating.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. But in any case, they have Ashildr has gone through the various sounds that are available to humans and kind of selected the ones that require minimal tongue movement and modified and made up some words that may be present in such an Avox language. So really quickly, I just wanted to read out a sentence. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but I'll try and do it. I'm going to read, I want to murder banana. Okay? That's a sentence. So that would be Womp, Məəvə, Bamama. So if someone wants to slow that down or something, you can hear that everything's with the lips and they're very low vowels. So I think it could kind of work. I would imagine someone who actually lost their tongue would lose an awful lot of the distinction in those sounds, because even though b sound doesn't really use the tongue, it's still being used to shape the airflow to some degree. So I don't think that would be how it sounds like, but I think it could work. So yeah, there we go. Am, Womp, Məəvə, Bamama. Yes. Title of the podcast.
Excellent. The first time we've oh no, it's not the first time we've named something in another language.
Piscod Wibbly Wobbly.
Piscod Wibbly Wobbly.
Yes, octopodes.
I just wanted to say to Ashildr, I really liked this, and I really liked the way that the sounds were chosen, and yeah, I thought it was really good.
As well, another thing I really like is that they give a sample vocabulary, and at the start it's modified English, right? So like father, for example, is fava. With an aspirated F, I can't do it, so fava. And then mother is Məəvə. And then I was like, oh, I see what they're doing. They're just replacing the English sounds with their nearest counterpart in this language. But then as you go through it, they become increasingly more alien, or increasingly they depart from English. And so it makes it sound almost like it's this language might be a pidgin or a Creole. In that there's elements still of English in there, but it's developing into its own thing. And I think that's, I'm completely reading that into it, but I think that's a cool thing to be able to read into just this little tiny sample vocabulary. So yeah, top-notch work. Well done. Okay,
the next email is, this was one I was going to answer. So it's from Dan M. Just a quick question. A term that I mentioned on a recent episode about the type of world building that I do, where information is only revealed by documents that would be available to someone who lives in the universe being discussed. So, what was that term? So, I don't know if this is a term used by anyone else. There may be a better way to express it, but I think I did see this somewhere else. I don't think this was my term. And anyway, the term was diegetic world building.
Diegetic world building.
Yes.
AKA endlessly frustrating to your co-host.
That's my aesthetic. I originally came across the term diegetic in relation to film, where diegetic and non-diegetic sound is a thing in film studies. So diegetic sound is something that is happening within the film. So if the characters go to a concert and there is music playing, then that music is diegetic music. But if there's a fight scene and there's just soundtrack music happening over the fight scene that the characters cannot hear, that is non-diegetic sound.
Yeah.
And I remember now, the reason that I thought of this in relation to world building was a little while ago, I saw someone talking about it in relation to maps within video games. So, if you just hit the map button and this, big interactive map comes up with labels and things that your character wouldn't actually have, then that would be a non-diegetic map. But if your character takes a map out of their pocket and unfolds it and looks at it that way, and it's like their actual map, then that will be a diegetic map.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember you saying that before, actually. I think that was the example you gave before. So, yeah, diegetic world building.
Diegetic world building.
Cool. And a final email on my end, if you're good to proceed.
Yep.
Is we got an email from Ali Hawbaker. They say that we can use both names, so I will do so. Ali Hawbaker, who I don't believe has emailed the show before, so welcome. They are saying that they are fairly new to Artifexian. Again, welcome. And they really liked stuff. Recently watched my TEDx talk and liked this whole like maths and logic and how that leads to realism and all that sort of jazz. They ask, where, with all the equations I use, where do I get the numbers from? Like, because they were like, when you were talking about Tatooine in your TEDx talk, you use the numbers that are stated on Wikipedia or, you know, that are canonical. But if you're just world building, where do you get the numbers from? And I suppose the very simple answer to this question is that some numbers you invent, others you generate. So like in the example of building a planet where mass, radius, gravity, and density are all linked, they're all proportional to one another. You could invent two of them and derive the other two, which is more realistic than just inventing four of them that make no sense whatsoever. So pick which ones you want to invent. Pick the things you really want. Like you really want a low gravity world, just make it whatever and derive the others. And then they also say, like, is everything based off Earth size? And I just want to reiterate this again. I've said it loads of times in the past, but it's worth doing again. I don't use units in most of my world building. It's all proportional sort of stuff. So I don't say like, oh, a planet is, 28.4 times 10 to the 30 kilograms, because that's meaningless. Like we don't have, that's so beyond our scope to visualize. Whereas if I say a planet has a mass of 1 with respect to Earth's mass, so it's the same as Earth, 1 times the mass of Earth, that is visually meaningful to us. You know, if I say a planet has 3 times the mass of Earth, you're immediately thinking like it's a really big planet. So all of the numbers, for the most part, I use are proportional units. They're always with respect to something else, be it the sun or be it Earth or whatever. And at the very start, I was very bad at telling you what it's proportional to. I would just give plain old numbers, and that was terrible. I've gotten better with it over time. So yeah, I hope that answers your questions. And yeah, just want to put it out there again for others as well who may be confused. Proportional units, and then invent some numbers, derive the others. In a stunning turn of events, folks, Bill does not have a piece of prose for us today, which can mean but one thing. He has a map.
It's true.
So
it's true. It's been a while since I've made a map.
It has been a while. So there's no reading involved here. Go to the show notes, check out the map on Bill's blog. Bill, I would like to use this as an opportunity to maybe do a retrospective on your work in romance.
Okay.
So would you be up for maybe going through some of the locations that we've heard before in your work and being all like, here's where that is, this is what occurred there, and move along the map? So that means I think everyone will be able to be like, yes, we get romance.
Sure.
Cool.
Sure.
Before you do that, I want to really quickly compliment you on the map.
Thank you.
Because it does a thing that very often people fail to do, in that it hints at a much, much wider world. Like the map takes up nearly the entire paper. It's not the shape of the paper, like it's not a square blob on a square sheet of paper. And it doesn't seem like this is a poorly constructed world map. This seems like it's a section of a much greater unexplored world, and that in and of itself tells a great story, and I really like that. Yeah, so there you go. That was my my thing.
Well, thank you very much.
No problem. Right, let's do a tour.
So this, as Edgar said, is a map of a part of the planet I've been calling Romance. So that is the That is one of the planets in the Handwavia system. I think it's the 5th planet.
Yeah, sure.
You see desert. It's the 4th or the 5th planet.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the 5th. I was just remembering there. And it is human inhabited, and it has a much lower gravity than Earth. Like we can link the details
Sure.
of the planet in the show notes.
Cool.
And the reason that it has a lower gravity is because I want to kind of invoke the planetary romance genre, which is the main example would be John Carter of Mars by Edgar Rice Burroughs. There's a few other ones. Robert Howard wrote one as well. And one of the common things in this genre is that a person from Earth gets transported to another planet or another place where gravity is much lower. And because of their mighty Earth muscles from fighting against Earth gravity, they're really strong in comparison. So they can jump really far and they can fight big monsters. And I built on that, and this has all of the places that I've created within romance so far, and I've added a couple more.
Although, to be fair, I don't think you've wielded this aspect of planetary romance at all in your writings about romance.
I haven't done the big strong Earthman kind of thing, no. But that was just the germ of the setting.
Okay. Do you intend on doing this?
Potentially.
Those intergalactic beneath traders, yeah?
Which?
The subreddit from last month? No? We were speculating, and I was like, I said something to the effect of those pesky intergalactic beneath traders, because we were talking about cross-pollination of your worlds. Never mind, man, it's fine. If you need to explain a joke, it's not funny anymore. Let's crack on.
Well, they would just be interplanetary because they're all from the same system.
Yes, sorry, interplanetary. Yes, sorry. Anyhow, sorry. Before the tour again,
Anyway.
Can you explain to me why are some places in red and some places in black? Like, I get that the ones underlined seem to be the names of regions, but what's the distinction between there? Is it city and town, or what's the crack?
Okay, so you're not quite right. The red cities are the cities that are known as spires by outsiders. I've mentioned that before.
Yes.
So they'd be the kind of the 5 principal cities of that. It's not a country exactly, but it is a sort of a cultural alliance. Imagine Greek city-states. They were at war with each other, but they were all Greek. And they were a distinct thing that outsiders were not. Right,
yeah, cool, that makes sense. And so then the black cities are just lesser cities?
They're just other cities. There's only 3 other actual cities here. Across the south here, we've got Atien, Henne, and Ebwar. Okay. And then the black underlined regions are just kind of lands or provinces.
Did you not say that that Hoi Tan was a peninsula?
Maybe.
Yeah. It's an island in your map, man.
I have absolutely no memory of saying that.
I'm pretty sure it was the Hoi Tan Peninsula. Yeah, I don't know, whatever. Sure, it looks, whoever's doing the cartography is not great at their jobs in that case.
Or maybe whoever said it was a peninsula was wrong.
Oh, that's fair. Or maybe it's just known as a peninsula for weird cultural reasons when it's actually not.
Yeah, maybe it used to be.
Maybe it used to be. Or maybe there's like a big bridge and so they're all like, it's a peninsula now.
Potentially.
Okay, so do you want to start? Maybe let's start with top left, right? Do you want to talk? No.
What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go through it in order of the stories that I've written.
Chronological order. What a boss! Look at that. Travels the world, comes back, has more work done than we ever thought was happening. Bill, I'm going to sit back. You just tell me stories, okay?
Right. So the very first thing that I wrote set in romance was from the point of view of the sort of mercenary naval captain, lieutenant, not captain, sorry, the mercenary naval officer, Yarthen te Yarthen. Mm-hmm. and he served aboard the ship Aspire of the Tamar Company. He was from the city of Mirsphere.
Mirsphere. So that is...
Which, if you look at the 3 cities in red at the top there, that is the middle one.
Okay, cool. He was from Mirsphere.
Now, the Tamar Company is actually, I think, not based in Mirsphere originally, but they have places in all of the cities of the Spires culture. He mentions being somewhere on the far side of the Usin Belt, which is the mountain range you can see there. Now, only a section of it is actually named as the Usin Belt, but it stretches pretty much from the Selin Lake there in the northwest, and it kind of runs roughly towards the southeast, and it stops being considered the Usin Belt around the Lusal Valley.
Yeah, cool.
Of the other places that he mentions there being a battle over the Selin Lake.
Yes.
Which is visible there in the top left. And the Usin province is on the Mirsphere side of the Usin belt. So kind of between that bit of mountain stretching east and the river south of that, that's called the Usin province.
Cool. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I think that's all of the places specified in the first one, in Yarklen's letter. The second letter that I wrote, was written by Vistan, and it was recounting Yarklen's story from the other point of view, and then what happened to them afterwards. Mm-hmm. So Vistan he encountered the Aspire somewhere on the far side of the Usin Belt, so on the southern side there, and he was cast out, and the crew had to hike overland for several days to reach the river Agba, I think it was called. The river Abga.
Oh, and where is that on the map?
So that is the big river there. See, like the 3 rivers that start south of the Selin Lake?
Yes.
And then that runs south and is joined by a tributary from the east.
Yeah, and they end up going into the sea at Atien.
At Atien, yeah.
Cool.
So
yep.
that's the Abga, the one that runs like kind of north to south, not the tributary coming from the east. So it was somewhere along there that he was that the Senan, his vessel, was taken by the Aspire, and on that river he encountered the Earthan River traders that were heading downriver to Atien. Yes.
Class. Cool. Yeah. Man, this is a real trip through memory lane, because you know where we release one of these like every month. So like you've written like 5 or 6 of these. So this is literally a half, like recounting the last like half year in my life. It's great. Love it.
I suppose it is, yeah. And he mentions that Vistan mentions when he gets to Atien, he's going to travel from there to Mirsphere, to Lansk, and to Otvev. And these are, you can see those other cities of the Spires there, because he knows that's the Tamar Company are Spires, kind of a Spires organization. So he's going to travel to all of those cities looking for their vessel and looking for the relic that was inside it. Mm-hmm. The third one that I wrote was A Year's Rise Revel.
A fan favorite, and one of mine too. I really enjoyed that one.
So you can see Otvev in it's the northeastmost of the Spires cities. They're near the Atramia Peninsula. It's kind of a sort of a gulf where the river leads into the sea, and Otvev is at the mouth of the river. And in Otvev, that's where Dajag Tashansha was recuperating from an illness during the winter period. Mm-hmm. And there's not that much extra mentioned there. He says that he was entertained by a troupe of acrobat players from somewhere to the far south of Anshas.
far south of Anches. Oh, so Anches is that middle region.
Anches is that middle region there. Yeah, it's bordered by mountains, kind of on all sides.
Yeah.
That's a very high, very arid plain.
The Tibetan plateau of your world?
Not quite as high as that, and not quite as mountainous once you're inside it.
Right, okay.
It's kind of surrounded by mountains, and itself is very, very high.
Okay.
But itself is quite flat.
Okay, cool.
And he also mentions a temple in Anches or a Hoitan chief. So there as like foreign places or places outside of his own culture.
Yeah, and the Hoitan being the peninsula island thing.
The island to the far east there, yeah.
Cool.
And finally, the last one we had was a death in Ebwar.
Yes.
And Ebwar is, you can see here, quite far south, kind of on the same latitude as Atien. Mm-hmm. And it's a bit further inland. And this is where the Meosphere licensed prospector Oskin Te Ater was mysteriously killed. And he also had previously worked in the mines of Anches. But as you can see, Ebwar is further south than the Anches.
And is there meant to be a city called Anches? Because I only see a region called Anches.
No, there's not a city. No, it's a region.
Oh, it's just a region. Okay, so all right, okay, grand, cool, cool, very good. And that was the final installment, the Ebwar thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I wrote 4 in total.
Oh, so that means you have a heap of cities here that aren't mentioned at all. Henai or Hena,
Hene,
Lansk, Vilv, and then I can't read that top one.
I mentioned Lansk in the second letter.
Sorry, yes, you mentioned Lansk, but we didn't mention Vilv, and you didn't mention Zikav. Zikav. Have you placed them here to tease us, or are they potential locations for? Have you thought of stories already, and they're forthcoming?
Not specifically. I haven't thought specifically of stories, but they're, as I said, and as you can see on the map, they're broadly, they're part of the spires as well. So that sort of cultural complex.
Vilv looks like either Lake Town or the Twins in Game of Thrones, is it? Where it's at the confluence of like 2 rivers. There's a big lake there, and I think that's kind of cool. I would like to hear a story from there.
It's a short distance. It's not quite on the lake. It's a short distance away.
Okay. Oh yeah, you kind of have that to point out. Yeah. Cool. I have 3 questions.
Yeah.
Is there a capital? And if not a formal capital, like what is the biggest city in this region?
I would say Otvev or Zhikav would be the biggest.
Oh, that's interesting to have the biggest be stuck there away from things. Because I get Otvev because it has access to what looks like a real good port area, but Zhikav looks like it's out in the middle of fucking nowhere. Sorry, Zhikav looks like it's out in the middle of nowhere. So that's cool. Second question. Scale. What sort of distances are involved here?
I'm trying to figure that out exactly. It would be a number of days travel between any of the Spire's cities by airship. So we're definitely talking in hundreds of miles, hundreds of miles.
And do your airships go at the same speed as like airships here, like hot air balloons here?
No, they'd be faster than hot air balloons. They'd be like
the Hindenburg.
Not quite as fast as that.
Right. Okay. So somewhere between the limits of hot air balloon and the Hindenburg.
Yeah, I mean the Hindenburg could cover 4,000 miles in 4 days.
1,000 miles in 4 days. That is shocking. You know what else is shocking?
No.
The fact that you quoted that in
4,000 miles.
Miles.
In 4 days.
Miles. Like why with the miles, man?
Because its first commercial voyage was from Frankfurt to Rio de Janeiro, I think.
Wait.
And it did it in 4 days.
No. I was complaining about the miles. Never mind.
I know, but I just chose not to engage.
And so final third question I have is what's the location of this in terms of like relative to the equator? What latitudes are we looking at? Or
This would be
put another way, what sort of biomes are we looking at?
You're starting to get taiga just at the north edge of the map.
Ah.
Yeah, so it's north enough. It's fairly north.
Okay.
Like all of the spires definitely have snow in winter.
Right. Okay. And when we get down to Atien, are we looking at a temperate climate, or are we still kind of very cold?
I'm thinking it's more temperate.
Okay, grand. Okay,
maybe
cool.
not quite Mediterranean.
Oh, right. Okay, so perhaps well, I suppose it would depend on the size of the planet, like, but like, would it be fair to say maybe the top of your map there, like where Otviev is, you could think of that as being like the top of Russia, and then
Not the top of Russia, no.
right, but hang on, but just for distance involved here. So Otviev top of Russia, and then Athien be bottom of Russia, because I'm pretty sure if you drew a line from Russia's most southern point, it would intersect the Mediterranean or be very close to doing so.
Well, let's look at Google Maps and find
Google
out.
Maps. Let's have a look. Oh, and while you're doing that, your names strike me as being very Russian or very Slavic in intent. Particularly like Otviev. Is that a deliberate thing, or do you have some sort of? Yeah, you have an affinity towards it. So your one of your user handles on your social medias used to be Slavic, I think.
No?
Yeah.
When? On what media?
On your Facebook, you had your name written in Russian script.
No, I had a name in Greek script.
Oh, was it Greek? I don't know. I'm not great with orthography. Sorry, my bad. But regardless, what is the motivation for being kind of Russian inspired?
Just as a new sound world to have, to be honest. There's nothing more than that.
Yeah, because it is quite unique. Like most people tend to err on the side of like make it sound like it's a place in the UK, or make it sound like it's somewhere in Scandinavia. So that is pretty cool. Yeah, so the bottom of Russia.
The very southernmost point is, well, like it has a border with Turkey, so.
Yeah, exactly. So it is quite Mediterranean. So yeah, I suppose looking at the map here, top of Russia is a bit extreme. But either way, polar or taiga to temperate perhaps. Cool. And then sorry, one more question popped in my head. Is the orientation of this map north-south?
Not exactly, but pretty much, yeah.
Okay, cool.
North is like maybe 11 o'clock.
North is maybe 11 o'clock. All right, cool. And so yeah, the unexplored things to the top there is north. Awesome, man. That's really great.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to add a little more detail before uploading. There's a few more places where I want to put mountains and things. I probably won't name any more regions.
Sure.
And a lot of this isn't very inhabited. Like between Atien and the Usain Belt, there's not very much. There are small towns and there's like logging and stuff, but it's not greatly explored.
Bill.
Yeah.
I have an idea.
Go ahead.
If you continue to write in romance, I'm assuming you're going to continue inventing places. So would it be possible, either on your blog, or I'm thinking probably on the podcast website would be easier, to keep an up-to-date map? So that no matter when people look at the map, it will always have all the places. I'd be more than willing to go in there and Photoshop in place names and just re-upload to the website.
Okay.
And have like a permanent link that people can just always be all like, I wonder what romance looks like now. Click and you're like, oh, it's really expanded. That's really cool.
Potentially.
That sounds. I think that's the thing we should consider.
Okay.
But yeah, so overall, man, class, love it.
Thank you.
The rivers are being well behaved. It's the main thing.
I actually, like, I looked at bits of the real world to get realistic feeling mountains and rivers for this. So
yeah, it works really well. Nothing kind of looks silly, and I think that what I said at the very start really helps with that. Like, it looks like it's a zoomed in portion of a much bigger world, and that really makes it feel very real. And the scale, even though there is no scale, there's something kind of, there's an inherent sort of like intrinsic scale to it that you can kind of see, and I think that really helps. Yeah. Do you have any final points on it?
There is one place that we haven't discussed at all.
Oh, VCOL.
There is still one place. My previous statement was a mistake that we haven't discussed at all, which is somewhat relevant to the overall plot.
As in like that's a teaser.
No, just like there's a place mentioned on the map here. There's a place listed that will be that has a relevance to stuff we've talked about in romance before.
Henai.
No.
Nalma?
No, I mentioned Nalmia.
Nalmia. Okay. What am I not seeing? Anyhow, sure, we'll leave it to be revealed later. Cool. All right. Shall we crack on?
Let's crack on.
Links in the show notes, all the usual places, folks. Go check it out. Okay, so it's been an absolute age because you were traveling since I released a video. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to publish the next video before this podcast. It is ready to go up either tonight or tomorrow morning. But
once you get the 10 hours up.
Once I get is that 10 hours thing still there? Hold on, is that still loading? It's been loading for age. It's still loading. That means it's been loading for like 4 hours. I hope YouTube didn't flag that and be all like, this is a suspicious looking bit of content. Because that would be terrible. Anywho, worst case scenario, it'll be in the podcast feed because that's way easier to do. So yeah, anyway, with regards to this month, yeah, I didn't. There's been no video. The video is coming out on Tuesday or Wednesday, so that is the 2nd or the 3rd of April. We're recording this on the 1st of April, April Fool's Day. So I have no content to speak about. So in lieu of that, I would like to talk about a music theory that I have that is kind of loosely based on what came up in the last show. If you're willing to hear me out, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So remember we talked about Steven Universe last time, and someone wrote in and were like, the music's very interesting. Each of the characters has their own instrument, and that's cool. And I was like, that is cool. That's really brilliant. And then I made a comment about how popular music and like film music tend to these things that we think are cool in it tend to be rather rudimentary in terms of like the composition that I would have taken in college. And huzzah, the April Fool's Day video just uploaded, 10 hours and 1 second. So people were talking to me in the subreddit about this, and were kind of getting me to clarify my opinions on this. And I think my sort of summarized statement of the whole thing is that it's not that I think that popular music and film music and that is like lesser or anything like that. It's more that there is this wealth of stuff in the avant-garde that does trickle down into pop and film and stuff. But the rate of trickle down, I'm always bemused by like how slow it is. So not that the two worlds don't mix, and not that the stuff that not that they don't combine in ways, but they just don't combine very readily. And people say like, oh, this is really brilliant. I'm kind of like, oh, but there's all this stuff over in the avant-garde. Anyway, so that was my point. To kind of sort of highlight this in a sort of very loose way, I want to talk about why the musical Hamilton is a modern day Jupiter Symphony by Mozart.
Okay.
Now, so for people who don't know about these things, Hamilton, I'm sure everyone's aware, but it's a musical, a hip hop musical about the first treasurer of the United States, Alexander Hamilton, written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And the Jupiter Symphony is the 41st symphony. I think it's the 41st or the 40th symphony by
I thought
Mozart.
It was the 40th.
Is it the 40th?
I thought so. Hold on, I'll just check.
It's up there. Fact check me, Will. And obviously...
Oh, you're right, 41.
41. So obviously Miranda exists in the sort of more popular thing, and Mozart definitely exists in kind of, more niche classical music. More people listen to Hamilton than they do Mozart. And I think the two works bear striking resemblance, but the Jupiter Symphony just does this thing so much more, and it kind of demonstrates my point about how, like, in the avant-garde there's just more of a thing, and that thing and feel free to jump in on me at any stage here, Bill. But the thing I'm referring to is the use of motif and counterpoint, right? So, oh god, there's so much to explain. Motifs are like repeated things that happen. So if there's a series of notes or a phrase or whatever, if that keeps popping up everywhere, that's a motif. And a counterpoint is where you play different musical ideas on top of each other at the one time, and they still make sense. I suppose a very simple example of counterpoint would be, we all know Frère Jacques, and how you can sing Frère Jacques, and if another voice comes in slightly delayed and begins singing Frère Jacques, it all connects and works. That's one example of a type of counterpoint. In the Jupiter Symphony, there at the end of it, it's the most amazing thing ever. At the end of it, Mozart, throughout the whole bit, Mozart has introduced us to 5 motifs, 5 phrases that seem unlinked, completely unlinked. And he plays around with these for ages, and at the very end of the symphony, a piece I think called the Coda, he layers these 5 melodies in invertible counterpoint. So these melodies can be flipped on one another and can be layered with any of the other melodies in any orientation, and they still make sense. And they can even be skewed, as in one melody could start a little bit sooner than the next melody, and it would still work. So it's this amazingly constructed, dense layering of all the things that we've just been listened to, presented in this like majestic sort of like, oh my god, it all comes together and fits. Just like storytelling threads, just all weaving to a close at the end of a piece. It's amazing. So that's the Jupiter Symphony, right? And I would argue that's a very abstract thing to do, to be able to compose like this, or to even think about composing like this. In Hamilton, right? Miranda, throughout the entire work in Hamilton, keeps presenting us with motifs. Now obviously he's not Mozart, right? So he's not thinking that instrumentally. He's thinking in terms of like rapping, because like that's what it is. And he presents phrases the entire throughout the piece. Wait for it, helpless, satisfied, don't stop, rise up. All these different phrases that keep coming back in various different contexts and getting different meanings in different contexts are used throughout the whole piece. And at the end, when, spoilers, Hamilton is shot and dies, just before he dies, he, in a sort of moment of like having his life flash before his eyes, he quickly iterates all the different motifs we've been hearing in a sort of almost incoherent ramble as he dies. And we as the audience then kind of hear all the different meanings we've associated with those things brought back at the very end, so we can kind of get to like have the retrospective on Hamilton's life before he dies. And I think that's similar to the Jupiter Symphony in that it's, sets up a whole load of things, brings them back at the end, but where Miranda just strings them together one after another. And that's not a bad thing or anything, but just that's a choice. And limited by the story he has to tell, admittedly. Mozart, on the other hand, takes all of these and then like layers them and intertwines them and morphs them and and like flips them and does all these things. So that's kind of what I was saying the last time about how when you step outside of pop and film music, there's all of this cool stuff that happens at pop and film music and theater and that sort of thing. But my perspective anyways, and I'm so biased here, I appreciate that, it just happens way more and to a way more abstract and almost subtle idea. Like you really need to be almost like a theorist to kind of appreciate the intensity of these things. So that's my theory. I'm going to leave, before I ask for responses there, Bill, I'm going to leave links in the show notes to an analysis of the Mozart piece, which anyone can appreciate. If you can look, if you can see and you can appreciate colors, you can appreciate this. So no musical knowledge required. And I'm going to leave an analysis of Hamilton's use of motifs. They're long videos, buckle down, but I think they're thoroughly worth it, and I think they're fascinating, and everyone should go check them out. So that's my thesis, why I think Hamilton and Mozart are thematically linked, and why Mozart just goes that little bit more, and how that hopefully elaborates my point from the last show. Any responses, Bill?
You said at the end there, you have to be a theorist to appreciate it, regarding the...
Oh, no, you don't.
Jupiter.
You don't.
No, you said as regarding the symphony, not as regarding the video about the symphony.
Yeah.
That seems like a major disadvantage in it. Like, why would everyone do that? Why would that trickle down further into pop and into film music if it required a specialized audience knowledge?
Well, one might say if it became more widespread, the audience would gain that knowledge and it would no longer be specialized. But then I suppose that just kicks the bucket down the road. There will always be something that requires specialized knowledge. Yeah, sure, that's a valid counter argument.
Like, people, I don't know to what extent it was understood as such by a casual audience at the time, and I don't know what the public reach of the music was, whether it assumed a musically educated audience or not. I've reasons to believe in both directions, so I'm not sure.
Oh, but, interesting.
Like art that demands more of its audience is always going to exist, and art that doesn't demand more of its audience is always going to exist. And art that requires less effort has a significant advantage. Less effort on the part of the audience has a significant advantage in many ways.
Sure.
So I think it is I'm not saying that it is a problem, but if you're presenting it as a problem, it is an intractable problem, because someone else is just going to make something easy, and that's going to be listened to more easily by people and have more success for that reason.
Sure, but in the case of Hamilton here, like if we take that Hamilton is doing the easy version of Mozart there, I think one can still do an easy version of a thing and a more easily understandable thing that kind of packs in the same ideas. So in the case of Hamilton, now again, he's limited by the story he has to tell, but assuming he wasn't, he could do a Mozart where you take a phrase, and they say he could like specifically construct a phrase that's, say, palindromic, right? Like a verbal phrase that's palindromic, and he could maybe layer that above another phrase or very close to a phrase, and that could alter the meaning of things. So, and that would be more easily consumed by an audience because it's not abstract music, it's words, and we're better at words than we are with music. So I don't think easy necessarily means that all the stuff that's in Mozart can't be in it, if that makes sense. They'll be in it to a different degree, but they're still of the same species even.
But I mean, I don't see why what Hamilton is doing isn't of the same species, but just easier.
Yeah, but like there's a bigger gulf between the two, I think. I've broken Bill.
No, I'm not really following.
Because remember, my thesis here is that I think there's loads of things that exist in the more abstract end of music that I kind of really would like to exist more in pop and film and theatre and that sort of thing. And everything I just said was me basically saying the beginnings of it exist in Hamilton, but I always kind of feel like just a little bit more, you know, like close that gap a little bit. Because there's so much cool stuff up there that if it could just be dragged down a little bit, or up there is bad. That's a bad way of phrasing it. Sorry, it's over there. That if it can be brought across a little bit and the gap between the two closed, I think there's so much room for creative expression there.
Yeah, but like that's just making a very specific value judgment, and you could just as easily say there's so little room for improvisation in modern, say, performances of classical concertos.
Sure.
That why doesn't it take more of that from jazz or from like modern improvisatory musics?
Yeah, sure. And I suppose my whole argument there is that it's based on my biases, and my value judgments for sure. And it's kind of an excuse for me to want to speak about Mozart and Haydn because I really like them as well, you know. So, yeah, that thing you said about improvisation in the concertos, for people who don't know, and I'm sorry, this is real heavy music building, but apparently people liked it from the last time. So, there you go. The concerto is a form, is a type of piece in the classical paradigm, that is usually a soloist playing with orchestral backing. And there's a specific form, usually, or at least in the sort of canonical sense, well, not canonical, in the traditional sense, there's a form these pieces take. And there's a thing in the middle called the cadenza, where the soloist traditionally would show off their ability their mastery of the instrument by improvising this like lavish, almost like a guitar solo. Think of like a metal guitar solo, but in the middle of a classical piece. And over time, that people have just stopped doing that, like stopped improvising, and people do written cadenzas, and it's kind of really abnormal for people to even write their own cadenzas and play them. They just kind of play the stocked one. And I'm guilty of this too. I did this in college. I played the cadenza that was written. I didn't write my own or improvise because I just can't. And it's a shame that that's been lost as a practice, you know? That would be cool if that was still there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be cool if that was done more. I understand the reasons why it stopped in that, but I think it's a shame.
Yeah, for sure. And one last thing, just you mentioned the thing that I really want to just address a little bit. You talked about like how whether or not the audience at Mozart's time were kind of musically literate, or whether or not they understood all the things Mozart was doing, and whether or not he wrote assuming the audience knew these things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you assume this when you write music? Like when you do things, do you assume the people will hear them, or do you leave them in there as Easter eggs or for your own fulfillment? What's your sort of? Have you ever thought about that? What's your sort of jazz?
I think it's my job to make
podcasts.
I think it's my job as a composer to make the progression of the music sensible. That that the audience can, like, whatever the material is, that the way the material progresses is coherent to them. And that doesn't mean that they have to consciously understand that. Yeah, it doesn't have to be consciously understood, but that, you know, if there's a motif or if there is a melody or there's whatever piece of material you want to name, that the things that happen make some kind of logical or dramatic or another kind of sense to them, consciously or otherwise. So I mean, people don't hear inversions. Like if you play a melody backwards and upside down, studies have shown that trained musicians recognize it less than half the time. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's a useful tool in a lot of senses. If you're expecting people to be, oh, isn't that clever? He inverted the melody there, because it's not going to happen. But that kind of thing can work despite the material, or despite the approach. If you know, if you invert the melody and it still sounds interesting, or it is a logical or whatever progression from the material that came before, then that works. And the fact that it is an inversion isn't the important thing.
Yeah, that's a really adult way of looking at it. That is a really solid answer, Bill.
I'm glad. It felt a little waffly as I gave it.
No, it's not. Your job is to make a coherent experience, and if there is extra added layers, people can find them if they have the ability to do so, or if they want to. But it's not your job to be musical wine. I'll be and just dump all of these techniques on people and present a complete mess of a thing and be all like, I'm great. What do you mean you didn't like it? I'm great. I put all of these things in.
The experience is what's actually important. And that's why I'm obsessed with form.
You are obsessed with form. I never understood it, man.
But do you understand it now?
I do, but I certainly, form was not a thing that I lusted after. But I totally get it. If you're on about presenting it to people in a clear way, form and the traditions of form is a really good thing.
And that's not to say that I think you have to be tied down to existing forms. For anyone who's not familiar with the form being used that way, it's just the way the material changes over time. Or the order things happen in over time.
Like a form would be like verse, chorus, that sort of thing. Exactly.
No, but like I think rhapsodic things where, you know, the material just keeps changing and doesn't ever repeat, that's equally valid as a form, but you just have to you have to consider the form is a thing that must be considered. That's what I mean.
Unless you're Charlie Parker. I joke, all the jazz people don't at me, it's fine. You're
but like I experienced that in film as well, and in literature as well, and particularly in comedy.
Yes, yeah.
Like I'm all about comedy that is constructed as an experience over time. That's like when a comedian does that well, or when like a piece of like comedy TV or something does that well. That's like my absolute favorite thing in comedy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there you go. So that's my thing. I apologize to everyone who wasn't interested in music talk. Oh, actually, there was one last thing I want to talk about. Just when you were on about like inversions don't work.
Mm-hmm. No, that they're not.
Yeah.
They're not heard.
That they're not heard. Yes. Do you know that Berg piece? Berg, for anyone, he's a German composer. I think he's German. He's a German composer. There's a piece he wrote for orchestra that's a palindrome, like it inverts in on itself. Do you know this piece?
One of the movements of the lyric suite does that, doesn't it?
Maybe, I don't know. So if for anyone here, what happens is Berg writes a piece and it plays in one direction for 3 minutes or whatever, and then at a central point he just literally just reverses the notes. Like he hits time reverse on his like video editing timeline, and everything just goes backwards. So the whole piece is palindromic, and it's Bill made me think of that when it was kind of like, no one can hear that ever. Like no one can listen for 3 minutes and then hear the reverse of that 3 minute part and go, yes, Berg, I know what you did there. But it still makes for if you like the music of Berg, a somewhat enjoyable experience, even if you don't let that soak in. But I think it's cool that stuff is under the hood, and you're like, nicely played, sir. I enjoy that.
Yeah, it works despite of the tools, or regardless of the tool, rather than because of the tool.
Sure. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Where some things like modulations and things work because of the tool, like that there is a response that you have to that musical event.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that was my little thesis. Anything and that, or should we move into the green room and hear about your adventures all around the world?
I want to add, because you mentioned Steven Universe at the start of this,
Yes.
and how each character has their own instrument. I think I mentioned that the YouTube channel Sideways has a video about this. I think I said that in the last episode.
Oh, if not, I will put in. Let me make a note of that. Sideways. I will put in.
Now that I think it gets spoilery for a fair bit into the series. So just if you haven't watched that much Steven Universe and you care about spoilers, be aware of that. But someone in the subreddit, user the Basilisk pointed out, and this is mildly spoilery for anyone who hasn't seen up to like season, 3, I guess. Am I good to go ahead, Edgar?
I'm fine. I don't care about spoilers. Yeah.
The diamonds don't have instruments as their motif. They have specific chords as their motifs, which is kind of interesting as well. And it's interesting that they took a different kind of concept to represent the leitmotif there. That it's not an instrument, that it's a chord, because the diamonds are more alien than that. So they have a whole different way of communicating their musical motif, which I know, I think that's kind of neat.
And I actually will give that like serious props there for being neat, because a common thing that people will do, and this is also in Hamilton, is that characters will have modes. So I'm sure we're all aware of like major scale and minor scale. Certain characters might only ever sing or be presented or instrumentally presented as major, and certain characters are minor. In Hamilton, the Schuyler sisters, for anyone who's seen it, the optimistic sister always sings in major, and the pessimistic sister always sings in minor, which is that's cool. That's brilliant. But the Steven Universe thing takes that idea and kind of makes it a little bit more interesting, in that it's not a mode, it's a chord, and that's really cool, I think. Shall we crack in the green room?
We shall. But before I do, I want to just point out something really quick about the map that I said earlier. I actually mention.
I love when you do that. It's like, oh, wait, by the way, half an hour ago, I said
I just realised that I in fact did mention the place that is going to be relevant to the meta plot, so never mind.
Oh, what is this place?
The Lucelle Valley. I think I briefly mentioned it.
Why couldn't I see the Lucelle Valley? Oh, because it's the teeny tiny writing there that I just thought that was mountains. Okay, you went to Argentina and Brazil, yes?
I went to Argentina and then I went to Brazil. Yes, indeed. So I was quite far west in Argentina. I was in the city of Mendoza.
Mendoza?
And around it, which is known as one of the big wine producing regions of Argentina. Particularly its Malbecs, which are a very tasty red wine. And yeah, it's a pretty cool place. We did some trips from Mendoza into the Andes, because it's right at the foothill of the Andes.
Oh, yeah, it's so good.
Like Santiago in Chile is only a 2-hour flight away or something, or less possibly. You can get a bus to Santiago, and it's not that long a bus. So we did some stuff in the Andes. We went whitewater rafting.
Cool.
Which was extremely fun. And I went to the first camp on the highest mountain outside the Himalayas.
Cool. What's the name of the mountain?
The mountain is Aconcagua.
Oh. And so you went to base camp, the base camp equivalent, but on Aconcagua.
Yeah, it's called Confluencia is the name of the camp. And it is 3,300 meters above sea level, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, and we started out at 2,800 or something, so it was a fair bit of a climb, like.
Holy cow, that's amazing.
Yeah. That was... And I had never done a hike before in my life.
You've never hiked before?
No.
All right. Do you intend on hiking again after this experience, or you're like, nah, man, I did it once, I'm done?
No, it was the absolute bomb. I loved it.
Really? Do you know what one of my dreams...
I loved it.
one of my dreams to do. Well, one of my obtainable dreams is to go hike up Carntoohil, the highest mountain in Ireland. Not exactly huge feat to do because it's not that tall, but I want to do that. But my unattainable dream is to climb Kilimanjaro.
Cool.
That's just never going to happen.
I don't see why not.
Money and time.
All right.
If I had unlimited money and more time, I would totally do it. But it costs like thousands to do, excluding flights and all this sort of jazz.
Yeah.
But that's great. If we're ever in the nature together, we should go hiking together. I adore climbing up things.
Yeah, for sure.
Great crack.
It was it was very tough, but it was very satisfying. Yeah. And I also sprained my ankle on the way down, which didn't help.
Man, I'm telling you, it's the way down that's always the problem. People are always like, "Oh no, up, down is where all the problems happen."
I much preferred coming down despite having a sprained ankle. It was. I mean, I can. Let me see. I wrote down a little bit about it. And I kept a fairly detailed journal while I was there.
Oh, you're so old school, man. Anachronistic Bill.
Anyway, yeah, up Aconcagua, it was a 3-hour or slightly over ascent, and it was a 2.5-hour descent.
Wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
That's intense.
And yeah, no, it was so fulfilling to do. I'm really glad we did it. Also, altitude is very much a factor.
Yeah, no, of course it is, man. Altitude is scary.
Like we started hiking. As I said, we went from kind of the entrance to the park, which is like 2,800, and we started hiking. And about 5 minutes in, we all said, "Lads, is anyone else destroyed?"
Yeah.
Because the difference in oxygen was shocking. Now I acclimatized pretty quickly. But just starting out was horrific. And when we got to the camp, we stopped and we had lunch at the camp before heading back. And we went on this like little hill where we could get a view of the peak, and it was really lovely. And there were two guys there posing with the Wipala, the Quechua flag.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So I asked if I could get a photo with them because I think it's a really cool flag.
Deadly. That's class, man.
Yeah, no, I don't know if what the appropriateness of someone doing that when they're not in any way indigenous to the Andes is, but the guys didn't seem to mind, so
yeah, and
hopefully it wasn't an inappropriate thing to do or to ask.
I would imagine, not to speak for them or anything, but I would imagine that if people take an interest in your culture, it'd be like you're not doing it like with bad spirits. You're kind of like, oh my god, your flag is amazing, like love this. An interest in someone's culture, particularly one that isn't like talked about very much, I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah, and I tried to tell them in Spanish that I liked their flag, so
I can't even begin. I did Spanish for a little bit on Duolingo, but I can't even begin to form that.
Me gusta tu bandera.
Oh, me gusta. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. Cool, very cool, man.
So that was really good. I saw lots of animals while I was over there. I'll be a bit more chronological. After Mendoza, we went to Iguazu, which this was cool. It's on the border of Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a 3-way border there, and you can go to a point where. So basically 2 rivers meet, and it's like at a T, and on the top of the T is Paraguay, and on either side of the kind of the bar, or like the horizontal bar, is Brazil and Argentina. Now it's not oriented that way to the north, but that's like the topography of it.
I see it.
And
I'm following you on Google Maps here.
Yeah, so you can see where they meet. Yeah. On the Argentinian side, there's like a little kind of plaza thing, and there's a little monument, and you can get your photo taken with the 3 flags, and there's like a viewpoint. And on the Brazilian side, there seemed to be a viewpoint, but it looked closed. Mm-hmm. And there was like a little fairground thing, like a Ferris wheel and stuff. And on the Paraguayan side, there was nothing.
Well, it
was really weird.
Do you know what the interactions between those 3 countries are? Do they like each other?
I don't know. I know. I think Paraguay has been historically fairly insular, and and it like had a big war against all of its neighbors in the 1800s.
Like all of them, like literally everyone. Hey, Colombia, you're next.
Well, it went to war. So yeah, the Paraguayan War, also known as the War of the Triple Alliance, or the Paraguayans know it as the Great War, was fought from 1864 to 1870 between Paraguay and, on the other side, Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay.
Wow.
And Paraguay lost hard.
They lost hard. But I'm assuming modern day, those feelings must have, gone away.
Presumably they're fine now.
Yeah.
Just that's the only point of reference I have for their interactions. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was like a ferry, like a jetty for a car ferry on the Paraguayan side, but there didn't seem to be anything to like mark that it was the triple frontier or that you could see the other countries. But it was pretty cool to be able to see to like two other countries. And we didn't visit Paraguay, so it was cool to see it. And anyway, in Iguazu, there's a massive waterfall, or like a system of waterfalls. So we did some hiking around there. Looked at loads of waterfalls that were just stunning, like absolutely incredible. Oh. You know the waterfall bit in Black Panther?
Yes. Oh, Bill.
Yeah, there was a bit that looked kind of like that.
Oh,
which is very cool.
Man, I thought this was going to be a whole heap of I went to loads of Argentinian museums. But Jesus, man, you're making me fierce jealous now because you kind of sound like you had the holiday that I'd really enjoy as well.
Oh. We did go to two wineries when we were in Mendoza. One that was like a currently active winery and one that was a historical one.
A drinking museum.
Well, we did do wine tastings in each of them, yeah.
Did you do all the swilly, spitty stuff?
We didn't do the spitty thing, but you can do the swilly thing for red. It's not as relevant for white wine. Oh. And she explained the science behind it and stuff.
Now, is that science or is that hokum? Because it sounds an awful lot like almost like tarot card readings. Oh, like I'm picking up when I swill this, I'm picking up hints of oak, and I'm like, no, you're not. It's made of grapes. It's fermented grapes. Like that's what the ingredients are. We stop with your flowery language.
It makes sense to me. Now, I'm not a wine taster, and I think that like there's a point beyond which it's nonsense. But they do have different flavors. They do have different flavor profiles, and people will acknowledge that it is somewhat subjective. Like, or at least this lady was like, it's everyone is going to have a different thing. Like when we drank the white wine, where you don't need to do the swilly thing. Everyone else was saying, it tastes like apple or it tastes like peaches or something. Whereas I thought it tasted like, do you remember those pear drop sweets?
Yes, they're great.
There's a really kind of like sharp, kind of high pitched flavor. That's kind of what I got from it. But anyway, so I think that was the only museum I did. But the waterfalls were great. There was a bird park, which was awesome.
A bird park?
Just a park full of birds.
Full of birds. It's open air. This isn't under a glass dome or anything. These birds can leave and come back and all sorts of jazz.
It's a kind of a conservation thing. So some of them, like they have flamingos and stuff, they're kept in open air because they don't fly that much. But there was other ones that were like big aviaries, big kind of wire aviaries.
Cool.
Loads of parrots. Parrots are great. I got so close to a toucan.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah, it was absolutely gorgeous. It looked fake up close. It looked like it was wearing a Halloween costume almost. It was so weird to see it in real life. And they had like turtles. They had tortoises and like crocodiles and stuff as well. That was pretty cool. But loads of birds. That was great.
And this is still in Argentina, yeah?
No, sorry, that was a cross because we crossed over into Brazil.
Oh, so you're now currently in Brazil. Okay.
Yes, so the first day we were in Brazil, the first full day we had there, we crossed over, we stayed the night, and then we went to see the falls from the Brazilian side and went to the bird park.
Right, okay, cool.
There's a fun animal called a coati, which lives in that area, which is like a jungle raccoon.
That sounds familiar.
And they will, like, I actually saw a coati steal sweets from a small boy's hand. And they'll try and like steal your bag, or they'll like pick through your bag looking for food and stuff. So
oh man, these chaps look hella cute.
They're very cute. They're
Oh
very,
my
very
god,
cute.
look at
But
god.
there's signs up everywhere not to touch them and not to feed them, and like someone's hand with a big gash on it, and people were still petting them and feeding them and stuff.
Oh no. I nearly got bitten by a monkey in Indonesia, and that was feckin' terrifying. Like going near,
Oh really?
Yeah, going near wild animals is just not a good call. Now I didn't intentionally go near said monkey; it came near to me. But just being in the vicinity of wild animals, not good at all. And particularly the ones that are kind of cool with humans, because they lull you into a false sense of security. You're like, this monkey's fine, or this coati's fine, but he's not. He's a disease-ridden wild animal. No good, no bueno. From a distance.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. Then we went to Ilha Grande, which is off the coast of Brazil.
Oh, you left mainland Brazil.
Well, like it's just off the coast. It's a really popular destination, and there's no roads on Ilha Grande, so you have to either hike everywhere or get taxi boats. And all there is to do there is hiking and beaches, and it's class.
Oh my god!
Turns out I love going to the beach.
You love the beach.
Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't expect to, because I haven't gone to a beach or gone on kind of a beachy sort of holiday in a long time. I don't know if I've ever done it before. And yeah, it's brilliant. It's really warm, and you can just like chill out and read, and you can go swimming, and yeah, it's really good.
I think that for me anyways, I fully appreciate that you dig the beach. I don't particularly dig the beach because I think it's like, to get a bit 18s plus here, I think it's like, you know, when couples are like, let's scoodly poop in the shower. And it's this romantic notion, and it's like, but if you ever attempt that, it's not romantic and it doesn't work and it's terrible. I think it's the same thing with the beach, whereby
What?
it sounds. Hold on.
Sorry,
What?
I missed the start of what you said there.
The beach is like scoodly pooping in the showers, because it seems like it's a good idea, and it looks like a good idea in films, and like media and stuff, but it's not if you actually go to do it. Like the beach, for me anyways, looks great, but like sand gets everywhere. If you have to put on your socks and shoes afterwards, and there's just sand in your socks and shoes. It's not
if you can just wear flip-flops everywhere like you can here.
Yeah, I suppose, but you still have sand everywhere. Like the Star Wars meme, like sand, it gets everywhere, and I find that very uncomfortable. But I will take your point that if when we were in Indonesia, I really enjoyed the beach because we sat just off the beach, on one of our lazy days, and just sat in a little bar place and ordered food and drinks and looked at the water. That was very nice. But being actually on the beach and like walking around the beach and going for a swim, not my bag.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of hiking to do, and over the course of the whole holiday, I swam in 3 separate waterfalls, which was pretty sweet. So we spent the guts of a week there. I didn't do as much hiking as I hoped because my ankle was still a bit sprained.
No.
Then we went to Parachi, which is a town further kind of south or west along the coast, and stayed in the town for a little bit, and it was just coming to the start of Carnival.
Cool.
And that's quite fun, and there's all this old colonial architecture there. And then we spent a few days outside that town, about 20 minutes outside, in an Airbnb in the rainforest, which was brilliant. And then we went to Rio for about a week, and we were there for the last few days of Carnival.
What's Rio like?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. Now, it's really, really big. Like, it's a massive, massive city. We stayed in... what was... Vidigal is the name of the place.
Yeah, sure.
Which is... So there's the real famous beach, the Copacabana.
Yes.
And then there's kind of a sort of a right angle. And then the next beach, like if you go around that corner, is Ipanema, which is also really famous.
As per the song.
As per the song, okay. The girl from Ipanema. And who is 71 years old now.
Oh.
And then there's Leblon, which is the next district and the next beach down. And we were just beyond Leblon. We were like 10 minutes walk further down. But it's kind of, you have to go around the base of that mountain or a base of a massive hill to get there. Mm-hmm. And I think where we stayed used to be or is kind of still a favela, technically. And it's like currently being gentrified. And yeah, they're like all built on hills, so you'd be in amazing shape if you had to live there, because you just have to climb hills and climb stairs all the time. But yeah, so we caught a parade of samba schools, which are like the big parades you see. The first night we were there, and then we went to some smaller, kind of more local things on the second day, which was the Carnival day, like it was Mardi Gras, Shrove Tuesday, whatever. And for the rest of the week, we went to see Christ the Redeemer. Mm-hmm. We had a recovery day. We had a couple of recovery days because we'd been just like going at it really hard. Like the same day we traveled to Rio, we had to get up really early, and then we stayed up really late, like looking at the parades. So we were awake for 21 hours straight after traveling. After a month of traveling. So yeah, it was. That was pretty intense. So we needed to recover a bit. I got food poisoning one day, so I had to stay at home in bed. But I stayed in and I watched Fast and Furious 5 Rio Heist. So I felt while I was in Rio, I should watch the best Fast and Furious film.
Come here to me. Christ the Redeemer. What's Christ the Redeemer like?
It's pretty cool. It's very, very busy. It was really, really packed, so it was kind of hard to take the time to actually take it in, and it was really warm. I think it was 39 degrees Celsius the way we were there.
Oh, gee, no, sorry, I just made my thing peak there. Sorry, I need to do that again. What?
Yeah, it was. I think it was 39 degrees when we were up there. Certainly later on in the day, when it was cooler, I was seeing like low and mid 30s. They have these animated billboards around on Ipanema and Copacabana and stuff that give you the time and the temperature. And like we're coming home late in the evening and it was like low to mid 30s. So I would well believe that when we were there at 11 in the morning or whenever we were, that it was 39. And it's very exposed, like it's up really high and there's no shade. So when it's hot outside and you can't like lean against metal railings or you can't like touch metal lampposts and stuff. Mm-hmm. That was happening on stone. You couldn't touch the stone railings of the stairs because they were too hot to touch.
I think 39. I don't think I've ever experienced anything close to 39. I think the closest I got was 33. Hang on, just for the Americans here. Just let me convert. 39 is 102 Fahrenheit, and then the highest temperature I've ever experienced is about 91.
Right.
Fahrenheit. That is mental. That is mental right there.
I didn't feel it in terms of, oh God, it's really hot. I'm getting overheated. Because it wasn't that humid that day.
Yeah.
And because I'd gradually acclimatized to it. Like it was warm when I got to Mendoza. It was in kind of mid 20s. Mm-hmm. Which is very warm for me coming from. Well, like it's warm for me at any time, and I was coming from an Irish February.
Yes.
But it was quite arid there. It's a dry area. Mm-hmm. And then as we moved north, it got more humid and more warm, but it was kind of a gradual acclimatization. But I got very tired. I got drained very quickly. So that's how I experienced it.
I had a similar thing in Korea. Like, remember I was on a podcast as well, where it was like it's 28 degrees outside and I'm dying, and everyone in the Reddit was like, "That's ridiculous! Come on, 28 degrees." In Fahrenheit. Hold on, 28 in Fahrenheit. No, not 28 Fahrenheit in Celsius. God damn it! Hold on.
-3.
It's -2. Yeah.
-2. Damn.
CS in Fahrenheit. 84. So 84. I was saying that I was dying at 84, but in Korea it's so humid that that 28 degrees is incredibly oppressive. And then when we went to Morocco, it was that 33 that I was mentioning, the odd 90s, and it was fine. like it was warm,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't go for a run in that heat, but like it wasn't like, oh my god, I'm going to die here. So the humidity is key in this, definitely. But that's cool, man. Anything else in Rio?
That was the majority of what we did. Like we did the carnival stuff, which was a load of fun, and we spent time on the beach and drank caipirinhas, which are mostly tasty. They can vary wildly in quality.
All right, like Guinness.
Yeah, but imagine it's like a cocktail, so it's even more so. But yeah, they're largely tasty, and Brazilian food is great. Anyway, sorry, I'll finish the chronology first. Then we spent one night in Sao Paulo. We didn't really get to see Sao Paulo that much, because like we took a bus there, and then we got a taxi from the bus station to the hostel, and like went out for one meal, and then the next morning went to the airport.
Right.
So we didn't get to see it that much. Sao Paulo is, and I didn't realize this, it's twice the size of Rio.
Wow.
Like I think Rio is something like. Actually, no, I'm going to get the figures wrong here, so I'm going to check this out. How many people do you think are in Rio de Janeiro?
Like 8-9 million.
It's 6 million.
6 million.
Right?
Okay. That wasn't too bad. It's a good guess.
Sao Paulo is upwards of 12 million people.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane. That is insane.
Yeah, like it's so vast. And I would have thought that oh no, it says here 14.7 million.
Wow.
Like, yeah. It's huge. I didn't get to see much of it. I'd like to get the chance to see it properly. We met people from Sao Paulo who said, "Oh, it's not great to visit," but I'd like to if I ever go back, to get more time there to give it a chance. It was like an hour trip almost in the taxi from the bus station to the hostel. It probably came down to closer to 40 because he was able to use bus lanes and things. And there was a storm started just as we arrived, so it was raining really, really heavily, and it was like driving through this unfamiliar city, and we went through some like fairly rundown areas, but we could always see like cool skyscrapers and stuff, and there was lightning going on, and it was the most cyberpunk experience I've had in a long time.
I love that, in a long time. Like I have. I am known to have cyberpunk experiences. I just haven't. There's been a
just not recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great. They're two very cool countries. If you like dogs, they're good places to go. Lots of dogs in Latin America, from what I see. A lot of them just kind of wandering around,
chilling.
If you don't like dogs, just be aware of that. Everyone seemed really, really friendly. We had a bit of Spanish among us. We didn't have any Portuguese. And it's funny, we were kind of worried about that. And then we went to Brazil, and most people would have either a bit of Spanish or a bit of English.
Yeah.
But even when they didn't, Portuguese and Spanish, they're really funny to compare because 50% of the time they're almost identical. And the other 50% of the time they are alien. It's really strange because like it can be exactly the same right up until it's going off in a completely other direction. It's really funny. But like I picked up a little. I was able to follow certain things from having like been in Spain. I was picking up a bit of Spanish and like watching my friends use it. And then being in Portugal, or being in Brazil, speaking Portuguese with people and seeing the comparisons and things. I did a boat trip while I was in Ilha Grande, and I saw loads of fish. That was really fun. And there was a small boy in the boat trip who got really excited, and he went "Muito peca," which was like I had followed along well enough to that point to figure out that he was saying so many fish.
No.
We had snorkeling. Snorkeling's great.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, which I wasn't expecting to be that cool. I was like, oh, cool. I'll get to look underwater. That I guess it'll be kind of fun. And I put it on, and we got one between us, and I was the first to use it, I think. And I put it on, and I looked down, and immediately I had been surrounded by fish, and I hadn't even realized I was in the middle of a school of fish.
Yeah, man. Snorkeling sounds one of those things that I really hope I can learn how to swim to do snorkeling. It's amazing. Like, it's an incredible experience.
God, I don't know what else. Oh yeah, Brazilian food is really good. Actually, South American food in general is really good. Every day I was in Brazil, I'm pretty sure I had fresh pineapple for breakfast.
Oh,
every single day. Yeah. And you know what else Brazilians like to have at breakfast, as far as I can tell?
No.
Cake.
Cake
at breakfast.
Wow, as in like sweet, like not a savory version of a cake. I guess.
I said a sweet cake.
Wow.
The
I don't agree with that whatsoever.
hostel I stayed in Ilha Grande had amazing breakfasts, and it was like this big spread of loads of breads and like scrambled eggs and huevos rancheros and various kinds of dips and things, and fruit, and the lady always made a couple of cakes as well.
It was great. Well, I mean, I suppose people would have like a muffin for breakfast, like a coffee and a muffin, and a muffin's a cake.
Or like toast and jam. I mean, that's a sweet thing to eat, so it's
I
far away.
Eat jam, so that doesn't come into my world.
But it is a breakfast thing.
Yes, yeah, that's fair. That is entirely fair. And people put sugar in their teas and coffees for breakfast. That's also, that is sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not as mad actually. Now that I think about it, but yeah. That's cool. So yeah, come here. We're at the 2 hour mark. So any closing thoughts or any final things, and then we should call it there because I will.
Oh, I don't want to take over the whole green room.
No, man, no, totally. No, we should totally take over the whole green room. But this is, I mean, like you're not going to Brazil every month, so we totally do it. We will. I have Bank of Artifexian stuff to talk about. We'll talk about next month because it's
cool. I do as well.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Because it's imperative that we keep this episode relatively small because I'm going to Sweden on the 3rd and I need to get it done prior to that. Otherwise, this episode is going to be like an additional week late and it's already late. So I'm conscientious of time. But that all being said, it sounds absolutely amazing. I'm so happy for you that you got to do all that. And yeah, it's great, man.
Yeah, no, I had an absolute blast. It was superb.
Cool. Yeah, should we call it there?
Yeah, let's leave it at that.
All right, and stop.
Edgar out. guys, so Edgar has stopped recording, but I said Edgar out. And now we're going to leave you with the song Patron by Ex Ovo Omnia. See you next month.